In 1914, the heir to the Habsburg throne was assassinated, triggering a war with Serbia. Freud's sons left for the front line of a conflict that would become World War I. The war threw up new challenges for physicians, the mysterious breakdowns suffered by soldiers.
Their disconnected speech and nightmares were diagnosed as symptoms of physical shocks to the brain, shell shock. But it quickly became apparent that soldiers who weren't operating on the front line, who weren't exposed to exploding shells, were also suffering. So the physiological explanations just didn't stand up.
Often written off as cowardly or weak, many of these soldiers were forced back into action within a few days. But Freud started a debate which would lead to today's widely accepted condition of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Freud believed that war neurosis was a psychological rather than a physical problem. He thought that shell shock must be an emotional trauma triggered by the horrors of conflict. And by the end of the war, others were starting to believe him.
World War I was a breakthrough moment for the psychoanalytical movement. But for Freud personally, it cast a long shadow. Post-war inflation wiped out most of his savings, undermining his comfortable life in Vienna.
Spanish flu swept through the city, killing his beloved daughter Sophie. And even though all his sons returned, they were scarred by the experience.
Freud began to question some of his core theories. For him, sexuality had been singularly responsible for neuroses. But in 1920, he published Beyond the Pleasure Principle and posited a second basic force in the mind, a death drive.
Before, he'd seen aggression as a sadistic aspect of the sexual instinct, the urge for mastery, the drive to dominate the sexual object. But now, with the raw experience of humanity's dreadful capacity for self-destruction, he started to focus instead on the fatal psychological impulses within us. Freud wanted us to face up to inward as well as outward aggression. He suggested that the death drive was part of the human condition, a powerful, deep-seated wish to undo the bonds of life.